Nigel, hi, good afternoon, welcome.
Hi, Judy. Lovely to see you. Lovely to be with you.
Great. Now, for the benefit of people who don't know either of us, my name's Judy Sharp, and I am a therapist. I work with hypnotherapy and past life regression and things like that. And I'm also the founder of a group called Indigo Umbrella. And we span the spectrum of science, spirituality, sustainability, healing, and we go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy. And along the way, I met lovely Nigel Grace, who's with us today. And Nigel works to support the charity of the Maharishi Foundation. Maharishi as in Transcendental Meditation. So we're here today to talk all about meditation. And I'm sure Nigel will know a little bit more about himself as we get in there. So Nigel, first of all, there's a lot in the press at the moment about meditation and its benefits, but also mindfulness and the benefits. Can you explain, please, what are the differences between mindfulness and meditation?
Yes, Judy, this is a very interesting point. Mindfulness, meditation, these two words are often used together interchangeably as if it's the same thing, but actually they're very two different approaches to the mind. Not only the approach is different, but actually it's been found that in the brain, if we look at through psychologists, neuroscientists looking at the brain, what's happening in the brain, it's very different. Let's look first of all about mindfulness. Has become very popular. Originally, of course, mindfulness came from Buddhist approach, Zen Buddhism. More recently, there are modern psychological approaches to mindfulness. And of course, it would do mindfulness injustice if I was just to explain it in one sentence. There's so many different types of mindfulness, but essentially we can say that it is bringing the attention, bringing the awareness to the present moment.
Yep.
Being aware of thoughts, categorizing thoughts, allowing them to go, allowing them to pass, accepting thoughts, finding insights, and most importantly, to let go of fear of the future, regret from the past. And so you can feel how mindfulness in all of its different ways have been very helpful to so many people.
Absolutely.
But when we look at the word meditation, actually it's quite different, because the purpose of meditation is to allow our consciousness, our awareness, to go to a very deep level of the mind beyond thought and beyond thinking. The meditation I teach, Transcendental Meditation, encourages effortlessly and easily a restful state of the mind and the body, so that we become aware of a silent level of consciousness that is beyond thought.
That sounds nice. A silent level of consciousness. I like that.
That's right. Beneath, beyond our tumultuous thinking, our anxieties, our worries, we go deeper. You know, when swimming in the English Channel, which I sometimes do off Eastbourne or Brighton, the waves can be quite choppy on the surface, but we also know that if we sink a few feet below the surface, everything settles down, everything becomes calm. So rather, as in mindfulness, we're accepting the waves, observing the waves. In transcendental meditation, we are sinking to a deeper level of the mind, where we are not trying to make the mind calmer. We're not trying to control thoughts. We're just taking our awareness to a level of pure consciousness. And that's the main difference.
Okay. Well, that sounds fascinating. One of the non-accurate perceptions I think about meditation, and it's a confusion, is that you have to do it one way. you have to sit cross-legged on the floor and hold your hands like this for 3 hours on end, or you have to gaze into a candle, or you have to stand on your head, you have to shut your eyes, you have to have your eyes open. And I've always found that actually I do my best meditation sometimes when I'm walking on the South Downs,
Yes,
which is
course,
my
yes.
path, you know, and particularly when there's nobody else around, you're just walking and you're surrounded by nature. And I might notice, I don't know, a particular orchid or a particular little sheep or something. But it is really, for me, it's putting the brain into neutral and just allowing. And I think that's an interesting word, don't you? Allowing.
You've touched upon the secret of meditation.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, you have. You know, all of us at some time in our life have experienced a level of the mind that is deeper, more quiet, calmer, more serene than our chattery mind, our constant thinking, worrying mind. And this can happen at any time. Walking on the hills, walking through the forest, looking out at the sea, or perhaps just being with a loved one or our favorite pet, or running. Sometimes we just notice that our consciousness, our awareness slips or falls to a deeper state, and it happens by itself. This is a very significant point about meditation. Transcendental meditation is a technique. It's one thing. It's a technique to allow that to happen. Twice a day, just sitting for 20 minutes. Sometimes when we're on our own, on the beach or in the mountains, this settling of the mind happens by itself. And we sometimes feel, oh, where was I? The mind moves by itself to this deeper level. We wish we could do that anytime when we're stressed, when we're troubled, when we're anxious. This is where a technique helps. We can have a regular experience, regular contact with that silent state of the mind through practicing a simple technique, sitting, morning and evening. So this is touching upon the fact that meditation is natural. This is a very good point, Jude.
And yet you've mentioned a technique, so it's not sitting cross-legged or staring into a flame or a rose. There is a particular technique that you teach people. And yes, from what I understand, there's also a mantra involved. So tell people what a mantra is and what part that plays and how it helps in the process, please.
Well, I was very lucky, Judy, to find a good teacher myself.
You had the best.
I was 19 years old studying psychology, very interesting degree. And I wanted to know how we can use more of the mind. Because my degree, I'm coming to your point with the mantra, don't worry. But this is a very interesting degree because I was studying psychology, criminology, sociology. And I was so fascinated that when we're in a stressed state, the prefrontal cortex switches off. And we no longer have access to our rational, responsive thinking, and we go into a panic. We go into, in other words, we're not using our full mind when we're under stress. And so I wanted to find what could there be that allows us to access our full mental potential. Yeah. And I came across Transcendental Meditation, and I found, just as you said, I love the word allows, Judy. This method of meditation allows the mind and the body to settle down easily, effortlessly into a silent state. But you might think, well, that sounds great, but it won't work for me because my mind is always thinking.
Yeah.
For this, we need a method. You're quite right to point out that a method is needed. In the case of transcendental meditation, we do recognize that the mind, the human mind, has this tendency always to be shifting, moving, wanting more and more knowledge, more love, more happiness. We're always reaching out. If we could just use this tendency of the mind to want more, but instead of reaching out into something around us, out there in the world, to actually turn within. For this, we have a method, and that method involves the sound, the vibration of a very ancient technique that comes from ancient India, and that is the use of a mantra. If we look it up in a Sanskrit dictionary, mantra is that which calms the mind.
Okay.
Now, when you go along to learn transcendental meditation, the teacher who's trained, like I've been trained for many years by my teacher, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who's the founder of Transcendental Meditation, he's taught us how to select this sound, this mantra that's appropriate for you, harmonious with you. There are a number of mantras. So we're not chanting out loud, which you'll be glad to know. So on the train up to Victoria, you won't be sitting in the train chanting. No, you'll just be sitting quietly with the eyes closed. But the way it works is the meditation, we close the eyes, just sitting comfortably, no funny positions, not cross-legged, unless you particularly want to, but just sitting in a comfortable armchair. And we close the eyes, and when we introduce this sound, this lovely resonance that we call the mantra, as you'll be taught, the sound, it holds the mind. It holds us still, but the mind is awake, not going off to sleep, not going off into a trance, but staying awake, alert, but still. And you know that the mind is always wanting to reach out to more and more. Well, instead of reaching out, the mantra holding the mind helps it turn within, so that our awareness starts to become aware of silent levels of the mind. It's rather like when you're swimming on the surface of the ocean, you start to slip, you start to shift, dive within. And as we dive within, it's almost as if we can sense the floor of the ocean, the bottom, the silent level of the mind, and it draws us towards it. That's why this inward dive of the mind happens almost by itself. So no control, no effort. We're not fighting against thoughts. We're not trying to control thoughts. We're just starting easily with the mantra, and the mind goes by itself to this silent state. And we come out feeling refreshed, rejuvenated, more positive, less worried. It's as if we connected with the self.
All of that sounds amazing. And you're saying 2 times a day, 20 minutes,
Yes.
which must be surely doable for most people.
Yes.
Particularly as you say, if they're sitting on the train up to Victoria, heaven help them. Although
the wonderful thing about transcendental meditation is that we can do it anywhere at any time. We don't need any special equipment or any special place to sit. You can even meditate when there's a helicopter going past.
I wondered what it was.
Yes. Yes. And now, the reason is that even with noise, this is obviously the helicopter came to make this point.
Of course.
Even with noise in the environment, it doesn't distract us because our attention is going inwards to a more silent level of the mind.
It's interesting you say that, Nigel, because as I mentioned earlier, and as you know, I work as a therapist. I work with hypnotherapy. I put people into a deep state of relaxation. I don't like the word trance, but I put them into a deep state of relaxation by relaxing the body and counting them down into a place where they're not asleep, but they are very relaxed, where I can access the unconscious mind. And it is interesting because part of that says that although they'll be focusing on my voice, any external noise really doesn't matter. And it's true that once they are in that state, all sorts of things can happen that I'm very aware of watching, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, and they're in that place. And it's actually a parallel, isn't it? Because the place where you're saying people are when they're meditating, it's like a still little centered space is the way that I perceive it. And it's the same really when I put somebody into a deep state of relaxation, except when I put them in there, it's for a specific purpose. It's a healing purpose.
Yes.
Whereas with meditation, could you call it self-healing, perhaps?
Judy, I think this is a wonderful point, a wonderful observation, because even though meditation is a mental technique, the body is profoundly affected. So just within this 20 minutes, the mind and the body, brain and nervous system achieve a profound state of relaxation. They say that when we go off to sleep at night, typically breathing, heart rate settles down by about 8%, 8 to 10%. Whereas in this deep state of relaxation, and I'm sure in your therapy practice, you find the same, that we go deeper.
Yeah.
Actually, it's been found that the breathing, the heart rate, the metabolism of the body drops by about 16% or twice as deep as in that sleep experience. And in this deeper, more significant relaxation, what happens? The healing response is activated. If there's any knots of stress being held here in the heart, any heartaches, any shock, any trauma, this starts to release. So in this experience of transcendental meditation, we're not aiming to achieve anything. We just go with that flow inwards. But the wisdom of the body starts to click in. And the wisdom of the body is about healing. You know, a wonderful study was conducted in US, in America, for PTSD.
Okay.
And the DOD, the Department of Defense, the military in America, sponsored this, that 300 service people, service men and women, coming back with extreme PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They were not functional. They couldn't function back in their families. Terrible. So they divided them into 3 groups of 100 each. And they gave one group health education. The other group, they gave the gold standard of therapy for PTSD. And the third group, they taught transcendental meditation. Now, after several weeks, everyone benefited. Health education people benefited. The gold standard therapy, they started to see some growth of coming back to normal functioning. But the interesting thing was transcendental meditation. They found that there's something happening in the brain, the amygdala, that was repairing, so that where there was previously a connection between some stimulus and panic, stress disorder, that was healed. And so the service people, service men and women, could still be exposed to something that previously would have caused them to freak out. It no longer made that connection, and they were able to go about their life normally. And so the wonderful thing is that it lasts.
Yeah.
And of course, with transcendental meditation, once you learn, it's always yours. So you can just keep meditating every day and you build up resilience.
What a
The
lovely
nervous
story.
system is strengthened.
What a lovely, lovely story. That's it. That's extraordinary, isn't it? The amygdala, that's the bit at the back, isn't it? The fight or flight.
Yes.
And you basically get an overdose of adrenaline, and it just stays open, doesn't it? And it floods
Yeah.
the body, and that is not good. But that's an extraordinary thing, isn't it?
You know,
So
yeah, go on, Judy, tell me.
no, it was another question, really, Nigel, to say,
Okay.
meditation used to be considered very trendy. It used to be the sort of peace and love thing, and oh well, I meditate and I eat my yogurt and then I meditate and it seems to have broken through that barrier. Would you say that? Would you say that meditation is now much more widely accepted?
I believe that this was the vision and the mission of my teacher, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He himself was a graduate of physics from Allahabad University. And I think that, working with Maharishi for 16 years or so, I saw there were two things driving him. The first was bringing peace to the world. From the 1950s onwards, when he was teaching, the world has been in a sorry state. He wanted to create a reduction in violence and the growth of peace. But he really believed that the way to do this was to bring meditation out of the realms of mysticism and to expose it to modern scientific method. And he did this by inviting scientists from physicists to psychologists to mathematicians to biologists to say, look at this through your scientific glasses, so to speak. And I think that created the shift.
Yes, that is interesting, isn't it? Because it comes out of the realms of woo-woo and into the realms of mainstream, as it were.
For example, a journalist was saying to me a couple of years ago, I remember him saying, I think I'd like to meditate. I fancy the idea of sitting doing nothing. And I said, oh, actually, no, you're not doing nothing. When you meditate, there's so much happening. For example, Duke University in America, they wanted to study what's happening in the brain when you go to a state of transcendence, this state of silence.
Okay.
And they described it rather, it's this lovely thing when you put a little thing in some bubbles and then you blow the bubbles and it was rather like they said that at the point when someone in meditation goes to this deepest state, there is like a flourishing of the creation of new brain cells. And so what is actually happening is not nothing. They also found that the brain is sorting short-term memory to long-term memory. While looking at the body, the nervous system, we find, and this was a study in Spain, 6 doctors looking at their patients who were practicing transcendental meditation, they found that the white blood cell count increased, thereby strengthening the immunity, the defenses of the immune system against cancer, against virus. So when we're sitting meditating, we're actually being very productive.
Indeed. Wow. Nigel, that is absolutely amazing. So thank you for all of that. I didn't realize that there's a lot more to it than I thought. And I think it's interesting that you say the journalist said, oh, well, sitting doing nothing. And actually it's not, there's an awful lot happening, because that's really this pea soup of super energy that we're living in. And scientists looked at that for a long time and said, oh, well, there's nothing there. It's just nothingness. We can discount that. well, actually it's not, is it? This 0 point field is what activates us all the time. We're swimming in this wonderful field of activity. And I think it's lovely what you've said. So as we sort of round this up, is there anything I should have asked you and I didn't? Is there anything else you'd like to say about it?
Well,
I think
you've just said the most insightful, wonderful observation about the 0 point energy and the way that physicists look at the quantum field, because they describe creation, they describe the universe in terms of layers of intelligence, the different types of forces coming down to the most simple yet most profound level of silence in the universe, which they call the quantum level.
Yeah.
They are increasingly recognized that the human mind is a mirror of that universe, so that when we meditate, the mind settles down through all those layers in our mind. And when we come to this silent state of consciousness, we are, in fact, one of the same as the quantum field of the universe and the quantum state of the human mind. So that is why when we meditate, we actually reach a field of consciousness which is common everywhere. And by doing that, actually, we enliven that field of consciousness and its values of orderliness, positivity, coherence, and bring it out into the world. So this is the great thing. And of course, as we do that, our life begins to flow. We begin to feel more confident. We have more self-esteem, more love. We bring more energy, more vitality, focus into our life. So this is why we're never alone.
That's what I'd like to pick up on, because in that deep state and we become one, is it so then that we find that connection with source, however one perceives source? Is it that we just shut up for long enough, we shut out the distractions for long enough that we can actually find the connection and strengthen the connection? Part one. And part two is, if that is so, is that why people then meditate in order to receive information, insights, downloads, and so on?
Yes, this is a very profound question, Judy. First of all, I would say that what we're touching upon is an understanding of higher states of human achievement, higher states of human consciousness. Because once we start to experience that transcendental state, pure consciousness, which is synonymous with the universe, we're beginning to open up our individual, our ego, our psyche. We're opening up to a wider field of consciousness. And as we imbue that into our life, we become more aware. We're using more of our mental potential. But as we grow, something else begins to happen. And that is, we start to feel, experience the silence of meditation when we're out in the day, out into the world. In other words, we're integrating the silent level of the mind with the active level of the mind. And this integration, in the old terminology of meditation from India, is called yoga. Yoga means the unification of the silent level of the mind with the active level of the mind, or to go deeper to experience the universal psyche, the universal consciousness in our individual lives, unity consciousness, the growth of higher states of consciousness. And this is what the great teachers are telling us from time immemorial. These great teachers from so many cultures are whispering to us, practice meditation to develop higher states of consciousness.
So as we, would you say that as a planet, as humanity, we are in fact going through this shift at the moment? And if so, if we are raising our frequencies, raising our vibrations, is meditation a key part of that?
Yes, and yes, and yes.
That's nice. That's nice.
I do feel that even though we read in the news, we listen to the news and podcasts, and it's pretty awful, most of it,
Yeah.
but there is change in the world through consciousness. We call it collective consciousness. Global consciousness is shifting. We are waking up as a species. We are becoming more aware. And the value of meditation, however we do it, the point of contact with the infinite and bringing that out through human life is creating a change whereby we are moving into a future in which harmony, coherence, positivity, love predominates. And it's hard to believe when you listen to the news, but don't listen to the news as your only thing. We've got to listen to our own feelings, our own heart, our own group of people, our own tribe, our own people that we communicate with, that we meditate with. There's change happening in the world that's taking the world up to a higher level of consciousness.
Lovely. What a lovely positive note to end on. Nigel, before we go, how can people find out more, please? Is there a website? Where can people go and find out more?
Oh, I'd love to hear from you. We do have a website. It begins with UK for the United Kingdom, uk.tm.org. So it's www.uk.tm.org.
Okay, very good. And
my email address is
by all means, please do. Yes, please do.
Grace, Nigel Grace. So it's ngrace@tm.org.
Perfectly. ngrace@tm.org. Nigel, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for explaining all of that. We've gone all the way out to the universe and back again. And let's hope lots of people get in touch. Nigel, thank you very much indeed. Take care.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.